from the top and not under my tongue. This is riveting podcast
Yes. Oh,
material.
yes, yes.
Listen to us drink.
Listen to us bitch about each other how we drink beer and cider. Hello and welcome to Pot of the Dead. I am your host, Nicholas, and with me, as always, is the final girl, Natasha.
Hello! Today we are going to go over The Dark and the Wicked, which is a 2020 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Brian Bertino, starring Mirren Ireland, Michael Abbott Jr., and Xander Berkeley. It follows two siblings who encounter a demonic entity at their family's farm after the suicide of their mother, who had long been caring for their sick dad.
Okay, so before we go into anything on this episode, and for the homework of today, trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. This movie deals with suicide a lot. So if that is something that you're not down with, I mean, no one's down with it, but like if it's something that like is a bit much and you don't want to listen to people talk about it, you're good to just skip the episode. Just jump to the end for homework, because that's what this movie deals in. And I didn't expect that going into it. And this is not spoilers. You know, this is just like, it's in the overview. That's something. And this is a very dark, nihilistic, hopeless movie. And I was here for it.
This one sat with me.
Yeah, so I knew nothing about it. There was one thing I did know about it before we watched it, and that's that Brian Bertino wrote and directed this. That's why I didn't watch this, because he's responsible for the original Strangers, and I'm not crazy about that movie. So it's like, oh, another film that he wrote and directed. I'm good. And then this somehow came up to us. I'm not sure. I don't believe it was a listener, but it just kept showing up, and the cover is like very striking, like kind of catches your attention and stuff. So it got on the list, and then doing research, I was like, oh fuck. Well, if he's capable of this, why does The Strangers suck?
Oh, The Strangers doesn't suck. The new one does. The original's good.
Which turns out, we were talking about it previously and stuff. He didn't end up directing the new one. It's just based on his stuff. But you said it's like basically shot for shot.
Yeah, it's so similar. So the fact that you said that, like originally when you said that it was him doing it again, I was like, this is the most lazy writing ever. So it's good to know that it is just like a new iteration of an older movie.
Yeah, but Brian Bertino is responsible for The Strangers. There's a movie called The Monster that he did prior to this one. And then, The Dark and the Wicked, which came out in 2020. There's not a lot of, I scoured through interviews and all this stuff. There's not a lot on this movie. Some stuff, though, that I did not get the budget. Can't find the fucking budget for this film anywhere. But I believe it had to have been kind of low. Low, not like, the Blair Witch Project low, but on the lower side, because the house that's used in this film is actually Brian Bertino's parents' house. This is
wow.
This is their ranch and stuff, because
That's awesome.
he's from Texas and everything, and he wanted to do his Southern horror film, and he hated so much that like when people are cast to be Texans and stuff like that, it doesn't cut through. And this film, like, it does. It feels like, and I've never been to Texas, okay? I'm not saying that, but this feels like real. Like the characters and everything. It kind of feels like not comparing this to a Hallmark film, but like, how like there's a lot of that like Hallmarky, like on the ranch kind of stuff, and there's like it just feels a lot more rugged, I guess is the best way to put it. This has that feel. Like these people, like it's very blue collar, and I like that about it.
Yeah.
But I do have the box office. Mind you, this came out in 2020, right? So this is during, the big COVID outbreak and everything. So what do you think it ended up making at the box office?
So everything was shut down at this point?
For the most part. It came out late 2020. It came out on video on demand and in theaters at the same time, but
Okay.
I believe that the box office includes that video on demand
Okay.
run.
I'm going to go with $17 million.
Oh man, this movie wishes.
Oh,
It made $422,000.
oh, ouch,
Yeah,
ouch.
yeah.
Yeah. Ooh.
2020 is one of those years where like companies weren't putting films out because
Yeah.
they were shelving them until they could get them in front of eyes and stuff like that.
True
Because
point.
so this film was going to originally be released at the Tribeca Film Festival in April of 2020, but due to COVID cancellations, the film ended up being released at the Fantasia International Film Festival in August of 2020, then having a theatrical release that November after RLJE Films acquired the distribution rights. Now,
Okay.
a little bit of history on some of these names, right? So the Tribeca Film Festival is it's an annual film festival organized by by Tribeca Productions. It takes place in New York City. Um,
Hmm.
Most notably, it's founded by Robert De Niro,
Oh.
Jane Rosenthal, and Craig Hatkoff. They did it in 2000. They started it in 2002, and it was their way to have a cultural revitalization of Lower Manhattan following the September 11th World Trade Center attacks. So
Hmm.
they basically were like, we need to bring something back to this area to like really get people going and everything. So they created the Tribeca Film Festival. It got canceled
Cool.
that year for COVID, so they went on to Fantasia, which is a genre film festival that's been based mainly in Montreal since '96, and it focuses on niche, low budget movies
Hmm.
in various genres from horror to sci-fi. Um, and then by 2016, the annual audience had already surpassed 100,000 viewers and outgrown even the Montreal World Film Festival.
Wow.
So that's where they ended up releasing it.
Okay.
A lot of these film festivals, how that works is, you know, you make a film, you get it produced, so you got the backing to get the movie made. That's all, right? When a movie
Hmm.
gets produced, so then you get it to these film festivals in hopes to get it in front of the eyes of distributors. So RLJE is a company that we'll go into a little bit more because, like, I since there wasn't a lot of information on the making of the film, I kind of wanted to use this as a little explanation on like how these movies kind of get to where they go.
Cool. Sounds good.
So RLJE ends up buying it, the distribution rights. So then they are the ones that they put the money into getting it places in front of eyes, and then they get a cut from that, right?
Gotcha.
So, um, where is it? RLJE. It used to be RLJ. It's an American film production company, home distributor. They've distributed roughly 3,200 exclusive DVD titles and
Oh,
approximately
jeez.
340 exclusive CD titles. Uh, Many of their titles and stuff are like a lot of digital rights. Like that's how they do
Okay.
a lot of their stuff. Um, but they have been putting stuff out. Like they started in 1981. They ended up changing their name in 2012. So that's how you get those numbers of like thousands of stuff.
Okay.
A list of notable films that RLJE has distributed is The Houses October Built,
Ah, all right. It's a good one.
Mandy, Color Out of Space, which is another Nicolas Cage. They
Mm-hmm.
actually have a taste for Nicolas Cage. Arcadian, which came out this year, which is another Nicolas Cage
Oh, wow.
sci-fi horror film, and Psycho Gorman. So
Ah,
yeah, they also
those are
seem.
good.
I didn't see this, but like knowing from just streaming and stuff like that, they seem to have some sort of deal with Shutter because a lot of RLJE films go to Shutter like
Okay.
directly. So they must have some sort of contract with like AMC Shutter because they tend to put stuff out together. Um, our cast with this, we had Marin Ireland, which you previously said. Her name's
Mm-hmm.
Louise in the film, and she looked a little familiar to me. That's because she was in 11 episodes of The Umbrella Academy. the Boogeyman that came out, I think last year, and then The
Okay.
Empty Man, which came out the same year, which I believe is like a Slender Man kind of horror film. And
Okay.
then Michael Abbott Jr. playing Michael was in last year's The Killers of a Flower Moon. Um,
Ooh,
have you
that's a
seen
good
that?
one. I
Yeah.
have seen that one. I didn't recognize him from that though.
The one that I recognized him from was Steph took me. Well, I hitched along for the movie The Bike Riders, which is
Mm.
like the invention of like the Outlaws Motorcycle Club and stuff.
Hmm.
That was actually really good. It's kind of like a romance film, but like it's more of a drama. It's good though. A period piece. If you ever get a chance to check it out, I suggest it. But then
Nice.
also he's got to be in one of the coolest titled name movies ever. He's in a movie called The Death of Dick Long. That's amazing.
All right.
So that's on my list. I have to watch The Death of Dick Long now. IMDb has this movie listed as a tragedy horror, which I think that right there is probably Natasha's wheelhouse. That
Yeah.
is tragedy horror.
I didn't realize it was a genre until
Well,
you
well,
just said
well,
it, and
it
it
wasn't
fits.
a genre. It was like tags. Like it's a tragedy film. It's a horror film. And
Gotcha.
I was like, oh, tragedy horror. That is very on the nose.
Yeah, this one did have a lot of resemblance, not just vibes of Hereditary, some
Hmm.
other ones. So yeah, I can totally see that. But I liked also not getting into too much, but I really liked how it was a tragedy, but not focusing on the parents so much as
Yeah.
like following their tragedy. It's following the siblings. So
Yeah.
I liked that spin on it.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the fact of Hereditary because when you look this film up on Google, people also search, and it's The Dark and the Wicked, When Evil Lurks, Terrified, which When Evil Lurks and Terrified are Argentinian horror films by the same director, and they're phenomenal.
Okay.
And they're very intense, like horror films. The Strangers, because of our director here. The new Speak No Evil
I saw that.
with Professor X. Oh, you did see that?
I did. Yeah, we went and watched it. I guess
Ooh.
it's a remake, which I
Yes,
didn't
it's a
realize.
Danish film that came out a couple years ago.
I want to see the original,
Okay. I
but
know the only thing I know about I haven't got to see it yet. But I have read some little things about it. I heard it's really good.
mhm.
Um, I heard that the ending of it is a nicer ending than the original because I guess the original ending is extremely nihilistic, which I'm here
And
for.
which is why I want to see the original
Yeah.
after realizing that it was a remake and people were like, you got to check out the original. I want to see that. I wish James McAvoy was more unhinged.
Oh,
That's my spoiler-free review of it. It was
but
good, but he
but then
could have
after
gone more
yeah,
for it.
then after that, Hereditary. It's right in there. And something that I was like reading on Reddit and stuff, like getting people's takes and stuff. Uh the more and more I read a lot of like I want to say snooty horror film fans takes on stuff, the more it makes me hate Hereditary. Now,
Oh,
now listen, okay?
okay.
This isn't me actually hating the film. It's me hating the fact that like because a lot of critics have like laid the thing of like it's the greatest horror film of all time, which is an opinion.
Hmm.
So many people have just aped that and just been like, that's a fact. Hereditary. So every time The Dark and the Wicked was being talked about, the direct line was like, it's good, but it's no Hereditary. It's no Hereditary. It's trying to be Hereditary. I was like, by no means. Like other than like
No.
it's a family dynamic drama, but like I mean, that's a lot of horror films.
Yeah.
I don't see a comparison at all in
And
these films.
I hated even saying that a second
Yeah.
ago, that like I got that same vibe, but exactly for that reason, I didn't want to compare the two.
Yeah, but like so many people like it's it doesn't do either film a service. Like are you always going to compare everything to Hereditary? Are you already saying that there is no film that'll be better than Hereditary? Like it makes sense to do that where it's like holy shit. I thought Hereditary was my favorite film. This one surpassed it or whatever, right? But like
Yeah.
to nonstop punch down at films because you're putting it against your favorite horror film doesn't do. I just don't understand that like kind of comparison to things.
Yeah. I
Uh,
agree.
but I did see like I felt a not connection, but a similarity when I looked up the people also search, and it shows When Evil Lurks and Terrified, which I own both those. We'll actually be probably covering When Evil Lurks in February for Foreign Film February.
Okay.
So be warned, Tasha, because
All right.
it's shocking like this movie is. Let's just put it that
Okay.
way. Like
Okay.
he's just like, oh fuck, a lot of that.
Oof.
Like I audibly was doing that through this film. Just like Jesus, I legit just went Jesus Christ probably twice in this movie because I didn't know what I was getting into. And then
Right.
seeing that it was made by the guy, and I knew this before I watched it, seeing that it was made by the guy that did The Strangers, I was like, this is gonna be boring. And it was not. It was
Yeah.
super creepy. Yeah, fucking great. So 2020 is an absolute, in my opinion, laughable year when it comes to the box office for horror films. Not that
Okay.
the money that they made, but like this is what was popular, right? Let me see here. In the top 10, most of them are PG-13 films. Right.
Oh.
So instantly I'm like, oh, this makes sense why I haven't seen most of these, because I tend to
'Cause
not watch them.
parents couldn't go to the movies without their kids because they
Yeah.
had to watch everything at home.
Yeah. So The Empty Man, which I previously stated, is number 10. Freaky, which is the Vince Vaughn like Freaky Friday horror film. Yeah, see, we're
Okay.
already, yep.
That
Come
sounds
Play.
horrible.
The Grudge remake, which I didn't
Great.
even know existed. So we have an American remake of an American remake from a
Oh,
Japanese film.
that sounds phenomenal.
Goddamn. Brahms the Boy 2, Gretel and Hansel, which that's kind of an important film in a way because that's our introduction to Osgood Perkins, who later did Longlegs and The Black Coat's Daughter and stuff like that. So I was like,
Okay.
oh, cool. That started in 2020. The Turning, it's a Universal horror film I've not seen. The New Mutants, which is a Marvel horror film.
What?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it's
Okay.
20th Century Studios. Fantasy Island, which is a Blumhouse horror film, and The Invisible Man, which we will be covering on this podcast because
All right.
it's actually an interesting take on The Invisible Man. It deals a lot with gaslighting and
Oh, okay.
and relationship manipulation. So, like, I think they did a really cool job with that.
Okay. That's not what I expected, but sounds
Yeah,
better than I expected.
But notable horror films from 2020, not the box office, is you've got Possessor, which is by Brandon Cronenberg, the guy that gave us Infinity Pool.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So that was his first year for that. So we're getting like Osgood Perkins coming out, Brandon Cronenberg. So you're getting this like new like director, like these younger directors starting to get out there. Well, younger in the sense of like they don't have a lot behind them yet.
Gotcha.
Host, which is an interesting horror film. It's basically what we're doing here, having a video call,
Yeah.
but they do a seance and shit
Oh.
starts going crazy. And it's short. It's like an hour 15 or whatever. I watched it on Shudder, I think, last year, and it for what it's doing, it's fucking great. It pulls some tricks that I was just like, right on. So it's kind of
Alright.
found footagey, you know. The Night House, which we have covered on here,
Yep.
and previously stated, Psycho Gorman came out this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
What is-
I feel like that movie is so much older.
Let me see here. Oh, that says 2021 actually. So it would have been the following year. It's even newer. Yeah.
I feel like you showed that to me like early out of college.
No.
Clearly not.
It is a lot newer. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So
Take your word for it.
that's right. But then the real box office. Oh my God. I'm just gonna run through these, and if you hear one that you're like, hell yeah, you just say it.
Okay.
This is sad to look at. The Call of the Wild. This is starting at 10. The
Okay.
Invisible Man. Little Women remake. Doolittle. So Dr. Doolittle remake. Birds of Prey. Star Wars Episode 9. The Rise of Skywalker. Jumanji, The Next Level.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, you like those?
I love those movies.
I thought the first one was cute, but yeah.
They're good.
Sonic the Hedgehog. No?
Nope.
1917, which I do want to see that. It's like the World War I film.
That is very good.
Yep.
It's long.
And then
It's very good.
Bad Boys for Life Will
Nope.
Smith and Martin Lawrence. Yeah, no thanks. This
I
fucking.
do.
I'm glad that COVID happened. If this is what we, I'm
But
glad
isn't
I
this
couldn't
the
go to
year
the
that they
theater.
put Maverick on hold? Like there were supposed to be some big movies that were
Yeah,
coming out,
yeah,
but they didn't because of. So
yeah, yeah.
those are the
There's
ones that people were like, you know what? Who cares?
we didn't
Just throw
we
these
didn't
out there.
start actually getting the movies that we were supposed to get until like 2022. Like they sat and sat and sat and everything, and that worked for some things. It didn't work for others, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's
What a year.
literally the information that I have for The Dark and the Wicked. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm not even kidding. I went through and I looked the composer for this has not composed a lot of films. Like it's just like nonstop. I was like digging and digging, and I just the only interviews you could get were like with the actors that are like, yeah, it was fun, it was crazy. That doesn't help anything.
wow.
Or like a producer just going like, yeah, no, it was cool. It was crazy. I could not find. I Googled and like looked for like a Brian Bertino interview because I wanted to see like where the
Yeah.
story came from. Anything, nothing. Like it was insane. Like I, there are
Wow.
times that films like don't have a lot of that like coverage and everything, but I assumed that like how recent this was, that it would have something, but not a lot. But
How recent and how like
yeah,
he's a known person. So
yeah.
it's not like it's his first rodeo with
Eh,
this.
Yeah, and this
Hmm.
film is like decently regarded. It's not like crapped on or anything. So,
Hmm.
but we're gonna do a little something a little different this time. We're gonna see if this works out for us. We're gonna give our initial reviews, not just initial scores on the review. If you're familiar with the podcast, we usually give our final scores at the end of the episode, which we're still going to do. But the way we're doing this is we're going to give, once the film ended, what we gave it. Okay. And then we're going to go into spoiler territory, which then we're going to openly discuss it. That may color our final score on it. Also, sitting with a film for a little bit allows you to actually process it, and that can cause the score to go up or down. It allows you to actually think about it. So for forever, we've always just kind of given our initial review. Like I watched it, I gave it a 20 out of 20, whatever. Um, but I think it's it gives a little bit better of a nuance to the scoring if it's like watching I give it this. But then after we actually did the film club and talked about it, and I sat here and thought about the movie, at the end of the day, I'm comfortable giving it this score. So that's kind of what we're going to try out, and we're going to see how that works out for us. But we're going to do our initial review. So Tasha, I think that you're giving this a 7.
You are correct.
Yep,
Right
7.
out of the gate, it was going to be a 7. So
Yeah,
we'll see. And
yeah.
I think you are giving it a 6.5.
My initial response to this film was a 9.
Dude.
I like
Okay.
I liked this movie a lot.
Wow. Yeah, you did.
So
Okay.
let's see how that changes, if it changes. I will say it has changed,
Mhm.
but yeah, like yeah, I got out. I stopped. The movie ended. I'm just
Mhm.
tripping on my words. Movie ended. And I was like, holy shit! Oh my god! And all this in an hour and a half. So fucking good. So,
Yeah.
uh, without any further ado, we're going to go into The Dark and the Wicked. And spoiler warning is in full effect. All right. Before we start spoiling the film, Tasha, give me that 10 out of 10 review that we found online.
Will do. Wow, this film absolutely floored me. I am an avid horror lover. Not much unnerves me. I knew nothing about the plot or the storyline before I watched it. Yes, the storyline has been done before, but this one did it better than any of its predecessors. A grown up brother and sister meet up at their parents' rural goat farm to help their mother care for their dying father. Their relationship seems strange, distant, but they obviously love one another. Small talk is absent, the atmosphere cripplingly tight and unspoken. Pent up feelings grows into a claustrophobic nightmare. Something is not right. The siblings feel it but cannot pinpoint the source. Their mother is behaving strangely, even though she is under considerable stress with the impending death of her husband. It doesn't seem to be the root cause for her weird demeanor. The cast and crew managed to ramp up the tension and extremes I didn't feel I would have the pleasure of witnessing again. To a horror lover, this is pure bliss. I was scared. The characters are likable, even with the strained and sometimes minimal dialogue. The actors portray the siblings' fear, confusion, and suffering with the force of a mallet. The punches of emotion, fear, and trepidation are many as the story unfolds and the events progress. This movie left me anxious as hell, palpitations, a brain full of questions, desperately wishing I could have experienced this at the cinema, as it would have completely destroyed me.
Oh yeah.
I highly recommend going to this film with no expectations and no preconceived ideas. Watch it in the dark at night and enjoy.
100% agree with that review. Like, yeah, they're like when they're talking about like the characters like being like likable and all this stuff. I'm not okay with saying likable as much as relatable.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of you and I's dynamic, our dynamic between the siblings. I
Okay.
found like not that like that you were her, that I was him, but like there were like certain things that I was just like I can remember some of these kind of interactions when it's the kids talking about the parents and stuff
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
It felt very very real, especially since like when we end these calls and stuff for recording and everything, then we have like sibling trauma bonding and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so
True.
like that kind of thing, like, is very real. And like, I think that they did a fantastic job with that. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I can see a lot of what they're saying in that review.
I agree. And on your end, I couldn't find a ton of 1 out of 10s that
God,
had substance to them.
goddamn right.
So I think that's something to say about this movie.
All right. One out of
Lay it on
10.
us.
Yeah. Lies, 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 lies. Cri-
Well,
criminally bad horror movie. I have very low standards for horror movies, even though I still enjoy watching them. Okay, so we've got a bias here. This movie,
but the
however,
bias kind of matches your bias. You have low expectations for movies sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, but they just said I have very low standards for horror. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Okay. This movie, however, was so bad I felt like somebody robbed me of my $3.99 rental fee. Fuck you, live with your decision. That's what I got to say about that. There is absolutely no plot anywhere to be found in this film. I waited patiently for everything to make sense, but it was in vain. It seems hard to believe, but the ending was even worse than the entire movie. It just ends. Yeah, I wasn't crazy about the ending, but it also
Me
still
neither.
kind of makes sense, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
Um, the only way you know the movie has just ended is the credits. I know 2020 was a bad year, but somehow this movie seems to have made it seem good by comparison. Damn.
Oh,
Shots fired. So, we'll just talk about the end, right? The end has like a jump scary kind of thing, right?
I didn't like it.
I wasn't crazy about the jump scare thing because, and we're in spoiler territory, so I'm not ruining anything. Every death in this movie is suicide, right?
Hmm.
I don't think that he's jumping up to kill her or anything. I think that like the dad's dead, the evil entity is now in it, and it's now pushing her even harder and further. And that's just, it just kind of gives you that, like, you know, in a way, the idea of like that you pan out of the house and you hear a gunshot kind of thing where you're like, oh shit, like things went bad. It kind of leaves it there. So just,
Okay.
I'm not a fan of the ending jump scare, but like when I was like thinking about it, I was just like, well, you know, like I guess like I don't. The only other way this ends is like watching her kill herself, and I mean, do I want that? Like, I don't think I want that. So there's really no other way to like other than just to be like, bah, and that's it. You know, like so that's my like take on the ending of this film. But
I think it would have been fine with her just like crying at her dad's bedside and panning out from that. So it's like, and I'm not usually one that wants stuff to be so left open at the end, but I would have preferred that over that jump scare because it didn't
Yeah.
fit anything.
Yeah, it didn't fit because like it was him seemingly attacking her.
Right. It looked like he was like biting her neck. Like
Yeah.
now there's vampires in this. What's happening?
Uh, all that being said, when they're talking about like there was no plot, there's 100% plot, and it's given to you by the priest at the dinner table, and this is what makes me love this film. Okay, so when the priest is talking about the wolf at your door and everything, he says, "You think the wolf cares that you believe he's real? Not if he finds you alone in the woods." This film is literally bad things happen to good people. It doesn't fucking matter. There doesn't have to be a reason that bad things happen. It's alluded to that it's the devil, but
Yeah.
it's not like the devil, you know? It's just like this evil entity. You can take it any way that you want. Like, yes, there's they're on a goat farm and stuff like that, but like they're not religious. The
Right.
priest that you see is the evil entity. It seems like whatever it is takes the
Mm.
form of anything that it's affected. Like it feeds on hopelessness and pain and all that stuff.
Okay.
So the priest, when he's showing up, that's not the priest, because when she calls the priest later in the film, he's in Chicago. He's never been, he doesn't know them, nothing. The only connection is that his daughter killed herself, and that is possibly tied
Oh.
connective wise to the dark, wicked thing. So
Okay.
it's affected that priest, so it's taking on the priest's thing. It takes on the granddaughter of Charlie. I think that's who it is, the ranch hand
Mm.
that ends up killing himself. It takes on that entity, or it takes her on, like, because it goes to the door and everything okay, everything fine, and then it starts fucking with her and everything. It lulls you into comfort to then
Whoa.
just torment you. And that's what was so effective in this movie is like I can very rarely think of a film that like every time you're like, okay, we got a little reprise, we can breathe for a second. It's like, no, it's just fucking getting worse and
Yeah.
worse, you know. So
But what does that have to do with the dying dad? I
that
think
I'm
like he could have been left out altogether because that made it a little confusing. Like, is
correct.
he the entity within him?
Yeah,
It
well,
like it just that
that
part seems
see,
so weird.
yeah, that doesn't make sense other than the fact that like they're coming home to help take care of him, right? And the
Right.
mom's like, "Don't come here," because she already knows that something's here. But to the
Right.
point where she doesn't believe in God, but she's reached out to somebody, like not that priest, but a priest of some sort in the area, because like the brother like gets really agitated, like you put this in her head and all this stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's really hard to understand like the real narrative point of the dad, because I don't believe that it's like in him, because it feels like it's feeding on him. So I guess this is the only thing that I can gather is he can't
Yeah.
make him kill himself, right? He's
Ah,
he's sick, he's
okay.
unconscious. So he's using him as his tool to make everyone else around him suffer. The mom and all
Yeah.
them. Because that's what he wants. He wants to make people suffer to the point that they kill themselves. That is 100% what he wants, or it
So it's
wants.
taken over this whole house as opposed to taking over a person like it did with
It's not
the
even
ranch
take
hand's daughter.
it's not even taking over a house, because it fucks with Michael at Michael's house that is
Dude.
hours away, which we will get into. But no, it's not like that it's
Oh,
haunted. It's following anybody that it can get its fucking barbs into.
gotcha.
Like if you literally think of it as a demon or a devil or however, right? It's not a ghost. Like don't think of it
Right.
as the person's haunted or the house is haunted. It is this thing that like the guy is sick, and maybe that was just a side thing. He just actually got sick, and it seems like he's like in-home hospice care. They're,
Right.
you know. So this evil shows up, sees an opening, and is like, I can use this to my advantage, and just starts fucking with the mom to the point that the mom is breaking, to the point where she ends up hanging herself, with the assistance of the evil thing, right? Because
Yeah.
there's like when they find her, there's nothing that she's standing on. Something had
Yeah.
to help her up there. So it's not too far to believe that it took on the form of somebody, the priest. It could have literally been that priest that was
Hmm.
telling her to do these things and all that. And the priest is phenomenal in this movie. So creepy. But yeah, it's just that pure wicked evilness of just, I'm going to push them to the point where they kill themselves, and
Yeah.
that brings me such joy. Like, it's like the thing, well, not, that's not me, that's the
That's what I thought you were saying.
no, I mean, from a
Floating.
narrative standpoint, yes, I was just like
Hmm.
completely floored. But yeah, let's go to let's talk about Michael's house.
Do we have
um
to? Yeah, let's just get it out of the way.
yeah, so
Oh, fuck.
yeah, let me roll up here real quick. We've got
Oh, I can.
we've
I
got
got it.
yeah, we've got Michael and Luis, right?
Hasn't.
They're the siblings, and they're going through all this shit. Things are getting crazier and crazier. Michael sees his mom, who is already dead, floating outside in the yard outside at
Yep.
night. Lights are kicking, like there's just like this shit going on, and he's
There's
such a
shadows everywhere through the
oh,
house.
the way that the
Lest we
shadows are
forget.
like moving closer to that. Oh, so
Hmm.
fucking good. Like,
Yeah.
I love it. But then yeah, Michael in the middle of the night is like, fuck this. I've got a family. I'm out. So at that point, when that happened in the film, I was like, that was kind of abrupt. Like, they just wrote him out. So he's
Yeah.
driving and he gets home. Tasha, would you like to explain to us how Michael gets home?
So Michael gets home and then walks into the kitchen and sees his two daughters with their throats slit, laying over the table, and then sees his wife on the floor, also dead. And then he takes it upon himself to take his pocket knife, and slit his throat. And as he's slitting his throat, he realizes nobody's there. And the panic and the just complete, like, oh shit moment on his face, and the sounds that were coming, I cannot get that out of my head.
It was so fucked up.
I'm sweating right now talking about it. Because then the wife opens the door and sees him just pale because he's bled out on the fucking kitchen floor.
Yeah.
And then she's terrified. Oh, it
That
was the most like compelling scene of the entire movie. Of like that scene, as far as like horror movies go, is one of the most powerful scenes I've
yeah,
seen in a
I
movie.
100%, because like it's such like a shift. Like, you're like, okay, he's home, and where are we going with this? Like, I was so confused because at this point I'm like with you, where it's like it's the house and like it's the dad, like it's all there, and
Mm-hmm.
it builds you to believe that. So then he gets home
Mm-hmm.
and you see that the family's that's like, oh no, it got
Right.
here and fucked with the family. God damn. So now he's already had suicidal like tendencies in the film, where like things have gotten hit, the knife to his throat and everything, and he's fought against it. So it's not too far to believe that okay, fuck it, what do
Yeah.
I have to live for? And then like, yeah, he looks like after he slit his throat, he's like bleeding out. He looks up, nobody at the table,
Oh my
nothing.
God.
It fucked with his brain to that point, and you just see it in his face, like, oh no, I fucked up. Oh
Mm-hmm.
no, I fucked up. And I was literally just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, one, like, I could not believe it. I straight up, and I've seen a lot of shit. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not the fact, it's the sum of its parts. It's not the part that he kills himself. It's not the fact that
Right.
the kids are, it's how it's done, and just so expertly done. Yeah, I'm 100% with you in the fact of like, this is possibly one of the most effective scenes I've ever seen in a horror film
Mm-hmm.
that I can think of, because
That
it's still with me. Like, I could
mm-hmm.
not stop thinking about this movie. And yeah, fucking that scene is wild.
There's something to be said about that initial instance of this was self-inflicted. He's now past the point of no return and
Yep.
no longer wants to be there.
Yeah, it's scary.
And
Like,
how he
legit
conveyed
scary.
that, yeah, how he was able to convey that in his eyes was like, that's acting, like A plus acting right there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that stuck with me that night. I slept for shit that night. And it was primarily that scene.
Yeah.
And like, I've had to take a break. Like, I just need to detox for a couple of days from anything that's like stress inducing and murderous because it always comes back to
Oh
that scene.
wow, you have
Hmm.
trauma from this film.
I do. Yes. More so than Hereditary, which is saying a lot because
Wow.
there's a lot of stuff in that movie too, if we're going to make
Yeah.
comparisons. But this movie has just sat with me in a way that I don't like.
Ooh. Well, see,
Between
to me, that's
him,
high praise.
it is. Yeah, it's they did what they needed to do for a movie. I just need to take a little break.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where it's just like, uh, I tip my hat to this film because, like, okay, we're gonna deal with some heavy shit, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't glorify it. It makes it as
Right,
grim and nihilistic. This is not a fucking happy movie. There is
right.
no levity in it whatsoever. There's no like
No.
scenes. It's just fuck, mom's dead. Fuck, dad's getting worse. We can't get him to the hospital because that will kill him, and the doctor won't do it because I can't let you kill your family. You know,
Hmm.
the hospice nurse tries to give some condolence in the fact of like, I believe that, if you love him, like it'll help and everything. And it's like, do you believe that? It's like, I sure hope I'm right. And she's not. And then she fucking just destroys
Destroys her
herself.
face.
Just fucking
Yeah.
it. That scene seemed a little over the top and stuff, like little, like let's see what we can do to make this a little edgy.
Hmm.
That one seemed a bit much. I would have been a lot happier if she would have just slit her throat or something to that degree to make it
Hmm.
like this weird, like just stabbing herself in the eyes with the sewing needles. Then it seemed a
Ugh,
bit much. I understand that like this whole movie to some people is a bit
it's a
much,
bit much.
but
Yeah.
it just seemed out of character for everything else that had happened in the film. But uh yeah, holy shit. That's
Yeah. And I knew where mom was going when she was cutting the carrots. I was like, oh, fingers are going to get lost. But
but
then it just kept going
yeah,
to like over the top gruesomeness instead of just like chop and then we cut away. Like it just kept
well,
mulling
and
at it.
even then, like, seeing a shit ton of horror films, it's like the chopping, you're like, oh, she's gonna chop her fingers off.
Hmm.
But it didn't do it right away. It just kept sitting and kept building that tension. You're like,
Yeah.
I know it's gonna happen. When is it when is it gonna happen? It's still not happening. Oh, now it's happening. Oh, it's happening worse than you've seen it happen because like,
Hmm.
she chops her fingers off. Ah, and that's kind of some shitty acting. But she
Yeah.
also like she's only in the movie for like
She's
15 minutes.
tired and old.
Yep. And then she just continues to chop the fingers up. They find it, and she's went and hung herself in the barn. Their reaction to finding her is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, it's so
trying
sad.
like that. I love the fact that
Don't
like
let her fall. Don't let her fall. Like, oh
yeah,
my God.
the the little details. The mom putting up the twine with the bottles and stuff to
Hmm.
keep like the goats in and all this stuff like but that's like a triggering thing of it's moving through. So fucking cool. Like how it I I cannot give this movie enough flowers. Like I am very excited to watch this again.
Damn.
Yeah, because
All
I
right.
know there's stuff that I missed. Like, there's so many subtle things in the background that
Yeah, that's true.
while I'm paying attention to one thing, what's to say there's not something else going on, And it had that like the night house feel where it's just like it's lingering in the background, where the night
Hmm.
house it was in the architecture and stuff like that. And I like that,
Yeah.
the scene where she's laying in bed with her dad and she can hear it crawling up on her dad and everything, and just that terror in her face. She looks and then her dad's like on the ceiling, but
Yeah.
that's all in her head, like, or is
Hmm.
it? It keeps fucking with you like that. Like the one, if I'm being honest, there are some scenes in this movie though that just don't work for me. The shower
Okay.
scene where the dad shows up with like the twitchy head, I'm just like,
Yeah, I didn't like that.
it's like kind of played out. The end like jump scare kind of thing, just kind of like, I'm making excuses for it, but like on paper, it's just kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
And then just yeah, the mom. There's things about her character that I like, and obviously she matters to the story, but it's
Hmm.
more like her acting is so underwhelming compared to every single other person in this movie. Like even the ranch hand is fucking really good. in this, and he's in it for a lot less time.
What do you mean by underwhelming? Because I just see her like a simple, plain woman. And
Her,
I think that's what she played.
yes, but what I'm saying is when everybody else is acting here,
Mhm.
and you're, well, I will say at a 10, we'll just, for the listeners, and then
Oh,
someone,
that's true.
if everyone's at a 10, right,
Yeah.
and you're at an 8, that gap seems more like you're at a 5 because it's so much more glaring because
Okay.
everybody else is great. So when you're not great, it's more noticeable. I'm not saying she did bad, but it's one of those things that, like, when it comes to the acting in this movie, that's the weak point, is her. I
Okay.
think,
I didn't pick that out. I just see her, like I said, she was just like, it just came across as so tired and
yeah,
so run down. And like, she was very, like, docile, but I
yeah,
feel like that was her role to be played,
yeah,
was just this like overcome with pure sadness. And clearly she was talking to this demon, so just exhausted the whole time.
yeah.
So for me, at least, it didn't come across like she was a poor actor. Like her character was just that type of person.
Well, that's fair. But like I said, that's just what I kind of, these are my glaring things that
Hmm.
I always have to come up with, these things when I really like a movie, right? And I'm not saying, obviously, I gave it a 9 coming out of it, right? But like, there are reasons that movies don't get 10s, and it's these reasons, and then those can still be overlooked if other things are just so much
Yeah.
better, right? So like, there's never going to be a film that's like legit perfect. You can
Yeah.
always critique something and find whatever, but it's like, how much does it affect my take on the film? And like, mine is like the beginning with the mom is like kind of weak, and the movie for me doesn't really start until she kills herself. So
Yeah.
like, that's kind of like, from that point to literally like the dad dies, just end the movie there. If you take that,
Yeah.
if you take that to that point, oops, bump my mic. Um, that to that point, I could give this movie a 10. All the
Gotcha.
others, and if the nurse killed herself in a different way, let's see here.
And if the dad didn't have tremors in the
Yeah, no
shower.
shaky, no Silent Hill dad.
Yeah.
If we took that away, I could give this movie a 10. But like, because of these things, because like the direction's fucking great, the setting, you don't see many fucking ranch hand Texas horror films. Like, if it's in Texas, there's a chainsaw involved, right? Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
so like, you don't get that vibe very often. I was like, this is fresh to me, like,
Yeah.
it's
I agree with that.
so. So what is, you've already talked about the Michael death, which will go on forever,
Yep.
in like possibly Hall of Fame scene for our podcast.
Uh-huh. And I'm not
Um,
going to say it's my favorite because that's just weird.
okay, what's your favorite scene in the movie then?
Hey,
Say it. It's Michael's scene. You
damn
know it
it.
is. It is. I'm right there
Gotta
with you.
be.
It's a horror film. What are horror films here
Yeah,
for? To
that's fair.
horrify in some point, right?
It's
Yeah,
very effective.
yes, Michael's scene, and when they find the mom. Those are the
Yeah.
two most effective, fucking heart-wrenching, tragic
Yeah,
scenes.
it's true.
So, what's in least favorite, I would have to say, is the end. It does stumble in the last 30 seconds, if that, 10,
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Yeah, I would say that the very beginning where the kids are coming and
Okay.
eating dinner, that part, I understand there's a need for plot, but like that's when a lot of my questions started, which is silly because it's the first bit of the thing. I feel like there's a lot still to question about, like, why is she cutting the vegetables so late at night? She turns the chair, so is like the entity hanging out with her, because you also kind of see him off in the distance
I must have
in
missed
the
that. She
background.
turned the chair. I thought the
I
chair
thought
turned.
so.
I thought the chair turned for itself.
Oh, in my mind, she turned the chair. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe it was just
One
my
of us,
inattentiveness.
one of us is right.
Yeah,
Neither of us know who.
that's very true. So the beginning had a really slow uptake, and I was kind of bored with it because it didn't seem like a lot of the storyline was built at the beginning,
Yeah.
which you would kind of expect in a horror movie that's starting off so slowly. But yeah, definitely 100% the ending with the daughter getting supposedly killed by the, yeah, I didn't like that part at
I
all.
I think like if we wanted to make it more effective, instead of having that jump scare, I think I figured it out. So she's crying, "Don't leave me," like you're all I have left, because everything that she has is gone now. Like
Yeah.
even her job at the post
At the
office.
post, yep.
So all these
She's got
things,
nothing.
if it would have been like he's dead and then like the movie ends with just, and it doesn't have to be in that sense of like camera right on his face and his eyes open or whatever, but
Yeah,
like
no, please don't.
you see his eyes open or something like that, but she doesn't notice it, and then that's the end of the film. You could
I
do
wouldn't
that.
like that either.
Well, no, I'm saying like to some degree of like it's not over, but
I see.
we know that she's going to die. There's no escape from this. They flat out explain that with Michael. There
Yeah.
is, once it's got its fucking hook in you, it's game over. Like there is no amount of crucifixes in your pocket that are gonna fucking save you from this.
Or what
Which,
about instead of like the dad's eyes opening, you see him die, she's crying, and then like it cuts to her reaching for like a gun or a knife or
yeah,
something, and it
I'd be
just like
fine with
cuts
that.
out with like that shot.
Yeah, I'd be fine with.
Something that happens slowly.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Just it's
Slowly and
there does
sad.
have to be something, because like I said, pan out, like yeah, you like have the gun thing pan out, you hear the gunshot as you see the house, and that's it. Like something like
Mhm.
that. I'm never there. Like this kind of takes me back to Sinister, having like the little like end of movie like jump scare, where
Yeah.
it's that same idea, but it's so whatever compared to everything else in this movie, that it's not that it doesn't docket points, but it doesn't docket enough points for me to go like, I'm never watching this again. This movie fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Because it's plainly painted out the fact that like, no, she's fucked.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those things where it is kind of a throwaway ending, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's so poorly
Yeah.
placed
Executed.
that
Yeah.
it sticks out because it's so
Correct.
off from everything else.
It's almost like the mom wrote that scene. It seems like something the mom would have written. Well, look, her acting was poor, her writing's poor. It just
All
is what it
right.
is. It's all her.
Okay.
It's
It's
all
just
her.
her fault. It's the mom's fault. It's always the mom's fault,
Always mom's
right?
fault. Mom doesn't listen to this podcast. She always asks how we're doing with it, so she obviously doesn't listen. So it's obviously always mom's fault. So yeah. I'm very interested to see. He did a movie prior to this called The Monster, which I am interested in checking out. But this is also a long time between The Strangers and this. Strangers
Yeah.
is like 2008. This is 2020. People grow, people evolve,
Mhm.
people learn. So definitely, like I can't say how wrong I was enough on this, because I literally saw that he directed it and I was like, nah, I'm good. Fuck this. It's
Hmm.
probably, I literally was just like, it's probably hot water garbage. Like, not even fucking interested.
Wow.
And for some reason, it kept coming up. I brought it up and to you, and I was like, I think it's by the guy who did The Strangers. And you're like, well, it says it's gory and everything. Let's do it. And I was like, all right.
Here we go.
I was looking for an out in a way. Like, I was waiting for you to be like, it's gory. No, I don't want to do it. And be like, okay, I guess we'll find something
uh,
else. But you're like, let's just do it. I was like, all right, this is
Great.
another Strangers, and boy, could I not have been more wrong. So
The one parallel between Strangers and this is the ending of It's Not Over, where the
yes,
strangers just drive off and they kind of go do their mischief elsewhere.
yep,
This is like paranormal, demonic stranger.
yeah, and like another big thing, which is a weird hallmark. A lot of people talk about Brian Bertino's films, like the lack of dialogue and stuff like that. There's
Ah,
so much
yeah.
more. There's so much more acting through like body and face than
Hmm.
words, which
Yeah.
you do get a lot in this. Like you said, the Michael scene and everything. Like
Dude.
there's a lot of that kind of stuff where I want to go back to the Charlie scene. Charlie fucking in his
Mm.
trailer, and it looks like it's Luis's character. It might be maybe his child. I don't know. But she's like cutting herself and like slits her throat, and it's whispering in his ear and everything. And he ultimately shoots himself, and the way that that's shot too is fucking, it's great.
Hmm.
Horrible that it happens, but it's a shotgun, I think,
Shotgun, yeah.
in his mouth, and then the camera's behind him, and you just see it kind of bloop
Oh,
splatter
yeah.
up and everything. I was just like, oh my god, like this movie does not pull a single punch at all.
Mm-mm.
You're going to get this movie is going to upset you in one way or another.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's that's the takeaway.
Uh-huh. At some point you're either going to sit there and allow it to continue to upset you, or you're going to shut it off. Like
Yeah.
this
Well,
is a movie that I wouldn't be surprised if people don't finish.
what's really funny is I started it and I'm like, I'm watching The Dark and the Wicked, and I text Tasha that. And then it's just at this point, it's just the ooky spooky bits of it, right? The mom has killed herself. We get the finger chop, but like the rest of it's just ooky spooky. And I'm like,
Hmm.
Tasha's gonna. I text you. I'm just like, oh, I think you're gonna dig this. Not 5 minutes later does it start going fucking hard. Then the movie ends, and I just text you, holy shit.
And I think my text back was, "Yep."
Yeah, because you started watching it right
Yeah.
then.
Like
Too.
I can't talk about it right now.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I so badly wanted to, but we had to save it for the podcast.
Yeah.
So, you got anything else you want to talk about with The Dark and the Wicked?
I don't think so.
All right.
I'm not a
So,
huge fan of like I guess the one thing is I'm not a huge fan of obviously paranormal movies, but I think this was done in a way where that wasn't the forefront, that
yeah.
they weren't like trying to evade an entity. It was just like all encompassing. I liked that component of
Yeah,
it.
there was no like they did try to deal with the priest a little bit, right? Like, oh, he did warn us, but like that was worthless because he is part like he isn't real or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's so much just run like that idea, but like they can't because they don't want to leave their dad, so they're kind of tethered to it. But Michael's like, fuck this, I'm out. But even then that's not enough. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love the there is no escape. This
Hmm.
this is your fate. I love that about this movie. So
The goats didn't have to die.
no, I forgot about that. I was sad
Yeah.
about the goat. When that
All
goat
the
shows up with
goats.
its missing leg, I felt so bad.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the scene that I actually felt bad. The rest of it, Michael killing himself and everything was shocking. I was like, "Oh no, that's so sad."
Yeah.
Outwardly, but like what actually made me sad was seeing that goat like hobble up. I was like, "Oh, baby goat."
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one was so traumatic. I just pushed it down into the recesses of my unconscious.
Oh no, my childhood's coming back. Too many emotions.
Oh man, I can't deal.
So, all right. Final reviews after talking and everything, really kind of breaking it down. My previous was a 9. More realistically, I'm giving this movie an 8.5. It's
Okay.
still fucking really, 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 really good. People want to compare this to Hereditary. I like this more than Hereditary because
Okay.
Hereditary leans more, and I'm only making this comparison because everyone on the internet wants to. So I'm going to just explain my side of the street. Hereditary, yes, is a good horror film, but to me, it's more of just a drama that has horror bits to it. This is a fucking flat out horror film that then also deals with those dramatic like relationships. This is my style of trauma. you know, like yeah, that's all I can really like. Yeah, an 8.5 I'm very comfortable with. I can't think of a film this recent that I've given that kind of score because like I know that I gave Mandy high ratings and stuff like that, but that's further back and everything. So that's what blew me away was like I'm giving a movie that the dude from The Strangers made
Yeah.
from within the last 4 years, like all of these things. I'm like, Jesus
A
Christ.
COVID movie.
Yeah, I fucking love this movie. So yeah, I'm giving it an 8.5 as my
All
final
right.
score.
Cool. I think I'm gonna bump mine up to a 7.5.
Nice.
After talking about it, I was in that camp of it not having really any plot originally, or a very, very loose plot with a lot of kind of red herrings that were never really dropped off. Like it was just, there was a lot of extra from my
Yeah.
original viewing that I thought. Talking about it, everything is starting to kind of come together, and it has continued to sit with me. I watched this on, I think, Tuesday,
Hmm.
and for me to watch a movie on Tuesday, which I usually do like the Saturday before we record, and still to be able to remember as much as I do,
Yeah.
that is very high praise for a movie
Yeah.
because my brain's not the greatest. So I'm changing it to a 7.5. I will
And
watch it again. I'll probably recommend it to a select few people.
yeah, because like initially, like when I said like, "Oh, I think you dig this," I was like, "I'm going to tell mom to check this out," and then it started going hard. I was like,
No.
"Mom is going to call me and be like, what did you make me watch?"
Right. Like, are you guys okay?
And then the natural consensus on this film is IMDb gives this a 6.1. Well, hold on. Let me double check that. I believe it's a
Okay.
6.1. I don't want to bag this film. I know it's rated the same as The Strangers.
Hmm.
I am so yep, it is
Interesting.
IMDb gives it a 6.1.
All
So
right.
most people give it, and that for a horror film, that's good. That's 5 to 7 is like, good horror film on IMDb. Very rarely do you get it like in the eights and stuff. That's where you start getting Hereditary and whatever all the critics are like really pushing, like Get Out is probably in that ballpark,
Yeah.
like those kind of films, right?
I
But
wonder if
like
Talk to Me's up there.
I think it is. I
Yeah.
think it's in that 8 category, um, which that all just goes back to horror doesn't get the respect it deserves, and we are here to offset that. So what is that? What does that give The Dark and the Wicked?
It gives The Dark and the Wicked a 74%.
Oh, just shy of being Hall of
Yeah.
Fame worthy for us.
But still,
Fucking
man.
IMDb.
Yeah. Although I feel like this would have been a movie that would have wrecked Steph.
Oh God, yes. I
Yeah.
straight up told her, like, I was like, it's a good thing you're not doing the podcast. So yeah, this movie would have ruined you. So
Mhm.
that being said, I'm just gonna bring this up real quick. Not a lot. Steph has walked away from the podcast for the foreseeable future. She might come back at a later time or whatever, but for the foreseeable future, possibly forever, it's just gonna be Tasha and I. So answer that kind of question if anybody's wondering about it. But yeah, we wish her all the best and welcome her
Yeah.
back. Welcome her back whenever life makes it more available to her. She's just busy. So yeah, so that's The Dark and the Wicked. For fucking Halloween season, I can't think of like a this is fucking Halloween. It's fucking so dark.
This takes all the joy out of Halloween. This is not Halloween.
Yes, it is.
This is traumatic.
And
Halloween is fun and spooky. This is just
this house we give out trauma on Halloween.
And ramen.
Yes, yeah, we give out ramen and Hugs juices. We were just pricing those out the other day. So
I love that.
if you come to the undisclosed location of my house, which I'm not going to give out on the internet,
Right.
I don't care how old you are. If you come to my house, we hand out packets of ramen and Hugs juices because little kids get thirsty on trick or treat, and everyone gives away candy, and people fucking love getting ramen.
Heck yeah.
It's weird. Like people are like fucking ramen. So like we've got like our head banging
Different.
skeletons. We got metal music blaring out of the front yard, and kids get ramen and they love it. So
I love this.
yeah. So we got one more movie for our spooky season. I mean, it's spooky season all year long here on Pot of the Dead, but our last film of the month is voted on by our Patreon members. So for this month, we are covering the 1988 David Cronenberg horror film, The Fly.
Ooh, I have
So
not seen that before.
so this stars Jeff Goldblum,
Yeah.
and it's fucking it's gloopy.
Is it?
It's a gloopy one.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, listeners.
So if
So
you want
excited.
if you want to be part of our Patreon, every month there's a list of like 5 movies from different eras, different styles and stuff like that that you get to vote on. We don't get a say, like you guys get to pick. You get to help forge the path. So if you go to patreon.com/pot of the dead 666 for $5 a month, you can, vote, you get the video of our podcast, Tasha and I try to put out at least once a month some added content like serious pasta for serious people, which I think we're going to record later this week, which is us reading like some creepy pastas. We're kind of working on maybe some sort of like horror RPG thing for the Christmas season, like which will be a long episode because, D&D kind of stuff isn't short, but these are the kind of things that we try to give out, you give us like $5 a month. We really appreciate that. That helps with the funding of getting this show going and everything. And, this isn't cheap. It's not free. We don't charge for just listening and everything. So, throw us a couple dollars. We try to make it worth your while. And we appreciate that. We've also got merch and shit places. There's fucking things. Go to our link tree. It's in the comments of this. It gives you all the places and the doodads, but
all the things.
Yep. So we're going to watch The Fly. 1988.
And if you haven't seen The Fly, it's on Hulu, Peacock, AMC Plus. It's kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime. So it should be pretty easy for anyone to find.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait. I haven't watched this movie in a while. So, for Pot of the Dead, I am Nicholas.
I am Natasha.
Come back and listen to us, or else.